Alright guys, so you may remember, let me just scoot back to the beginning here. You may remember thinking back, let's just think back to the fall of Rome. So we know that poor government, inflation or the raising of cost of things while money still stays the same, and especially invasions led to the fall of Rome. So we know that the Roman Empire included much of Western Europe, so we know that it had Spain, it had Gaul, and then all of that area north of the Alps, along with the Italian peninsula. And it was united for a pretty long period of time by the Latin language, Christianity, and their culture. Well, the Germanic people who ended up conquering Rome, as you know at the end, would later build on those uniting factors, but they would tweak them a little bit so that they reflected more German values instead of Roman values. So after Rome collapsed, there was a lot of decline in the city. So there was political, social, and economic decline. And Rome was pretty much cut off from civilizations who were advancing with the times, like the Middle East and China and India. So they had no way to really interact with those countries and those civilizations in order to kind of advance their own city as well. So because the invaders threatened, especially the German invaders, trade pretty much halted completely, and a lot of learning that we had been seeing in Rome and advancement of science and art and philosophy and all of those areas absolutely ceased to happen. So that's why we call those ages the Dark Ages, okay? And so the blending of Greco-Roman, which is just Greece and Rome put together, Christian and German traditions actually created a new civilization that we know as the Middle Ages, or medieval culture if you prefer to look at it that way. So I'm not really going to go into, the rise of Germanic kingdoms because you don't really need to know it and it's a lot to understand, but if you really want to see what I'm skipping through here, feel free to. But we're going to skip right to the Byzantine Empire and the Justinian Code. So we know that the Byzantine Empire was the eastern portion of the Roman Empire. So west was Rome, and that's in that area, and the Eastern Empire was pretty much everything else that that the civilization of the Italians owned. We also know that the eastern portion, if you'll remember, was the much more wealthy half of Roman Empire. So while we know that German invaders overtook the western part and the Roman city, Emperor Constantine in the eastern part of the Roman Empire sort of shifted their base to the eastern Mediterranean. So they sort of gave up on the western part of the Roman Empire and all that area in Western Europe, and sort of just relocated their country. It was like, well, they're kind of a tumor on us, so we'll just cut them off and hope for the best. So they rebuilt the city of Byzantium. Let me show you exactly where Byzantium is. So if you look, there we go. In this map right here, here is Rome, and here is Constantinople, which is what Byzantium will become. So you can see it's almost directly east of Rome. It's just over near Persia. So this is Greece here. This is what you guys know as Persia, and so it's in that area right up there, sort of in the straits. Okay, so like I just said, we know that Emperor Constantine rebuilt the city of Byzantium, renamed it Constantinople, and actually made it capital of the Eastern Empire in 330. And also, like I just said, it was located on the Bosporus Strait. And we know that straits are just narrow passages of water that make for excellent trading systems. So being on that Bosporus Strait meant not only that Byzantium or Constantinople at this time had an excellent harbor and could trade very well, but it was also very well guarded by the water. So it didn't need a whole lot of walls surrounding it because it had the sea to protect it. It just needed walls on sort of its back half in the land. And so after Constantine, to sort of make sure that they were still protected, other emperors built an elaborate system of sea and land walls to assist in the defense of Constantinople. And Constantinople was sort of like the customs in the airports for goods from all over the rest of the world. So people sort of went through Constantinople in order to make it anywhere else in the world, to make it down to Greece or make it up to the northern part of Europe. It was sort of like baggage check. And like I said earlier, the Byzantine Empire was very wealthy, so the empire's rulers usually lived in splendor. They dressed in the finest silks, and they attended chariot races just like their Roman counterparts had while Rome was still a well-off city. So that just kind of makes you think, how is the Byzantine Empire reminiscent of its Roman origins? How does it look exactly like what we had in Rome before they started to experience political and social corruption? Just let that marinate in your brain while we're going through this. Alright, so the empire reached its peak under a certain emperor named Justinian. He ruled from about 527 to 565. And he was determined to revive ancient Rome and sort of make the Italian Empire into what it used to be. So he sent General Belisarius and the rest of his armies to reconquer the land that the German invaders had taken from them. So like North Africa, northern part of Italy, and Spain. But these victories, well, and they did succeed, but those victories were only temporary. And basically Justinian ran out his bankroll. So he didn't have any more money to sort of wheel and deal with the military. So the legacies of Justinian weren't exactly that he reunited the empire and got all that land back, but it was sort of the buildup of the city. So Constantinople at this point in time had been devastated by riots and fire, and Justinian set out to make the city more grand than it had ever been. He does this by building the Church of Hagia Sophia. And Hagia Sophia is Latin for holy wisdom. It's sort of an architectural marvel. You'll see it in just a minute in a video that I'm going to have you watch. And basically it drew the attention of the world. So people, flocked to Constantinople to sort of see how this church had been built, what Justinian was doing in his city. And this church was sort of the growing point for the rest of Constantinople. After he built this church, all the other things fell into place. So I'm going to show you this video. It's about 8 minutes long, so if you'll just flip to the next box, please.